a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me, and love has called my name, and I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and child of God. Oh, I am a child of God.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday morning, January the 9th, 2024, and hope you're having a beautiful morning. It's cold here, and I'm sure it's cold there, too. It's cold kind of everywhere these days. This morning, I want to encourage everyone to continue to pray for Israel, to continue to pray for Israel by name, to continue to pray for those in captivity, to pray for the leaders, to pray for the soldiers, and to pray for the people of Gaza that their blinders would be taken off, that they would see, that they would have a heart to see and a willingness to see truth, and that the Lord would set them free from their own captivity. So I want to continue to encourage you to continue to pray for Israel. I'm today praying for 34-year-old Elkanah Bobat, and I want to challenge everyone again to pray by name, to pray with specificity, and go into the description to bringthemhomenow.net, and you can see those who are still in captivity. All right, well, this morning we are continuing in Revelation. We are now coming into Revelation chapter 7. We're going to look at the first portion of this, and let's read the closing verses from yesterday's portion at the end of Revelation 6, beginning in verse 12. The sixth seal is opened. I saw when the Lamb opened the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became as black as sackcloth made of goat's hair, and the full moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth like a fig tree drops unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The heavens ripped apart like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from their places. Then the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the military commanders, and the rich, and the mighty, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they tell the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" And so now we've had sort of through chapter 6, kind of this almost breathtaking pace of judgments with these first 6 seals. And so we're expecting the next words to be, "And I saw when he opened the 7th seal." We know they're the 7 seals, and that's what we're waiting for. But we read about a different seal initially today. He says, chapter 7 opens with after this, or with this, I saw, and the indication now is that the 7th seal is not going to be opened quite yet. There's a delay of the end of all things, and so here in chapter 7, there's a pause before continuing with the 7th seal. And chapter 8 is where the 7 trumpets that will follow the 7th seal begin to unfold. Between the 6th and 7th seals, there's this interlude, which is a similar interlude that comes between the 6th and 7th trumpets, and beginning in chapter 10. And in chapter 7 now, John gives us a picture of, there's 2 separate visions that have quite a different tone and a different pace from what we've seen in chapter 6. And it stands in stark contrast. The chapter 7, the beginning in verse 1, it stands into these verses, it stands in contrast to sort of the panic and the desperation that we see at the end of chapter 6, right? Those that are hiding in caves, begging for the rocks to fall on them because of the outpouring of God's wrath. Well, here in chapter 7, we see, first of all, John has a vision on earth of God's protection of this group of people on earth. And then that's what we're going to look at today in verses 1 through 8. And then there is a second vision of the rest and the relief and the newness that's enjoyed by a second group who have passed through that who have passed through tribulation, and are not necessarily, they haven't had to endure wrath, but they've passed through tribulation. They are in the presence of the Lord, and we've already briefly looked at that passage, but we'll look more closely tomorrow. So chapter 6, verse 17, right, it ends saying, for the great day of their wrath has come, and it says, and who is able to stand? And it ends with this word to stand in Greek is estotas, who's able to stand. And chapter 7 opens up with using that same word for stand, using with the answer to that question, who is able to stand? And it opens with, well, I saw 4 angels after this, or with this I saw 4 angels standing. They're able to stand. So chapter 7, verse 1, John writes, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the earth or on the sea or against any tree. Or the word, it's kind of a generic word for tree there that can mean trees, it can mean plants, those things. And so first we see, talks about these 4 angels. I saw 4 angels. They're standing at the 4 corners of the earth. Well, common way of conceiving of the world in its entirety is by reference to the 4 corners of the earth in relation to sort of the 4 points of the compass. And so the corners here is the word gonias. It's actually from the word for knee. It has, which bends at an angle, right? So your knee, gonu, which bends at an angle. And so here it's talking again for all the flat earthers out there. This is not the earth is round, and the 4 corners is a figurative picture of the entirety of the earth. We read in Isaiah 11, verse 12. He will lift up a banner for the nations and assemble the dispersed of Israel and gather the scattered of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. This is language which, of course, would have resonated, given for understanding from every point of the earth. Second thing it talks about is I saw them holding back. And the word holding back here is the root word is kratos, which usually has to do with power and strength and might, and so it's pointing to their grasping, they're holding back, and it's with great strength that they're holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the earth or on the sea or against any sea. Now, the image of the 4 winds of the earth, it's not just to like, oh, now everything is still and there's no wind. The 4 winds of the earth they point to God's judgment, and we see that in different passages in the scriptures. Now, so the 4 winds here are understood to be ultimately under the control of angels who, as servants of God, they direct those winds or release those winds toward the accomplishment of God's purposes on earth. But the winds held back are seen as destructive, as part of God's judgment against evil. And there are passages in the Hebrew scriptures where we see that. For instance, Jeremiah 49:36. The Lord says, I will bring upon Elam the 4 winds with the 4 quarters of heaven, and will scatter them to all those winds. There will be no nation where the dispersed of Elam will not go. In Daniel chapter 7, verses 2 and 3, Daniel said, I was looking in my vision at night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were churning up the great sea, and 4 huge beasts came from the sea, each different from the others. And then in Zechariah chapter 6, Zechariah writes, again, I lifted up my eyes, beginning in verse 1, and behold, I saw 4 chariots emerging from between the 2 mountains of bronze. And the first chariot, so we saw 4 in Zechariah, you saw 4 horses in chapter 2, but here we see 4 chariots, and these 4 chariots, the first had red horses, the second chariot black horses, the third chariot white horses, and the 4th chariot had strong dapple horses. Then I responded by saying to the angel speaking with me, well, what are these, Lord? The angel answered me, saying, These are the four winds of heaven that go forth from the presence of the Lord of all the earth. And so here, what we get in chapter 6 or chapter 7 here of Revelation, the scope of as the winds go forth, kind of the scope of their activity is depicted. They're not only impacting or held back from how they impact the earth and the sea, which kind of is the entirety of the world, but also it uses the language, but don't even blow on any tree, which is a figurative or representative of the things that would be most vulnerable to the destructive force of wind, that these trees would, to be knocked down. So the four angels are standing, right? Who's able to stand? Well, the four angels are standing at the four corners, and they are with strength holding back, waiting for the instruction, holding back the four winds, which the implication is that those winds will be unleashed. There's a point of further judgment of these winds that are going to go forth from God. But right now, the reason they're currently being restrained is to prevent these winds of judgment from bringing their destructive effects against the earth until it is time. And so he says in verse 2, then I saw another angel. I saw another angel, and here it's translated coming up from the east, but the very literal translation, which I prefer the literal translation here, but it's coming up from the rising of the sun. It's the east and the rising of the sun. So the imagery that he's given is right now that he's seeing is upon the earth. He's getting a vision of something on the earth. So he sees another angel coming up from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. He cried out. Okay, so let's just pause there. So we have this appearance of another angel who's depicted as, it says, having the seal of the living God, which is an important detail that is directly connected to why there's the delay. They're holding back the winds. He saw these angels holding back the destructive winds, and then he saw another angel. And this angel has the seal of the living God. And the word seal is we've now seen a lot of times. It's already occurred 10 times in chapters 5 and 6. Now, literally, the seal refers to kind of the wax that is put on a document. That on one level, it can be the official that keeps the official imprint, but the seal also refers to the signet. You have the signet ring that would mark that seal. Now, with with legal documents, we've talked about this. There would be usually 6 seals, and they would be sealed by 6 different people with their rings to talk about to point to the authenticity of the document, right? This is a genuine document. And in here, the seal or the signet, this is the seal of the living God. This is the seal of God himself, the true and eternal God. And so whatever bears this mark, right, belongs to him. And the angel cries out here. This angel comes, and this angel has the seal of the living God. He cried out with a loud voice to the angels, the ones who it had been given to them to harm the earth and the sea. The word for harm there is how we have the word in Greek, if you put the word a in front of something, it's the absence of it. It's like atheist is a not theist. Well, this is and it uses the word for righteousness. So they're permitted to remove righteousness or to injure, to harm. It's kind of the opposite of righteousness. So they're given to injure the earth and the sea. And the angel, the angel cries out to the four. I say he, but it's just, it's a neutral. Cries out to the 4 angels who are holding back the winds. Verse 3 saying, don't do it, basically. Do no harm to the earth or the sea or the trees until we have put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Hold up. Don't harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, right? Don't release the judgments that are currently being held back. This is because there needs to be time to provide the seal, to seal the servants of our God on their foreheads, right? So the nature of the mark or the seal isn't specified. But later we'll see, when we see later in chapter 14, verse 1, we get there's the indication that this seal represents the name of the Lamb and of the Father. Look, Revelation 14:1, it says, "Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads." Right, so I want to just point something out. We're not to this point yet in Revelation, but obviously there are a number of things that we talk about a lot when it comes, people talk about a lot. There's a lot of speculation about a number of things. And, of course, the 144,000 is something that we're going to look at today, and we'll look at again in chapter 14. The two witnesses is something that people talk about, but I think a lot of what people talk about, my whole life, is the mark of the beast, right? Are you going to take the mark of the beast? When I was a kid, there was this movie, or it was called A Thief in the Night. In the congregation where I attended, they showed it. And if you didn't take it was after the rapture. And if you didn't take the mark on your right hand or your forehead, they would cut your head off. It was terrifying. I was 7 years old and just like, oh, I will never take the mark, and we'll talk about it more when we get there. We talk about a very literal mark. And again, it very well may be a literal mark of the beast, but literal or not, it is more than just literal. It is also figurative, right? It's pointing to identity, because what we see here is a mark on the forehead. These have the mark of not the beast. They have the mark of the Lord. They have the seal of the living God on their forehead, right? And that seal points to identity, to whose I am, right? So when you contrast that with when we talk about the mark of the beast, and that, that here, those who are marked by the beast, that their identity is marked by the systems of this world, that their primary activity, their right hand, the primary activity, their strength is marked by the activity of this world, by the system of this world, by the beast of this world. Whereas God's own is a mark that he can see. It's a mark that again, there's about to be judgment unleashed on the world, and 144,000 are going to have a mark on them, the seal of the Lord on their foreheads. So does that mean they're going to have a physical mark that everyone can see? I don't think so. I think there is a spiritual mark. I think there's an invisible ink that the Lord sees, and that the unseen world can see, marked as whose we are. And so here is that the judgment is delayed until these will be marked so that they will be spared. Right? That's the implication, is that this identifying seal will protect them from the onslaught of the judgment that will soon be released against the wider world. Oh wait, they're his. Oh, they've got the mark of the Lord, right? They've got the mark of the Lord. That one's got the mark of the Lord. Look, there's going to be tribulation that's going on, but there's a mark on these 144,000. And again, when you talk about this mark of the Lord, it would bring to mind different things from our memory from Scripture, the markings of the Lord, things that beginning in Genesis 4:15, where God places a mark upon Cain so that no one would take his life. And that seems to be more likely a literal mark. In Exodus chapter 12, the blood of the Passover lamb is put on the doorpost of the Israelites' home. So there's this mark over our home sparing us. In Ezekiel 9, there is a prophetic passage where a mark is placed on the foreheads of those who grieve over the sin of the city. And the result of their heart condition toward what they see is that their lives are spared. Let's just take a glance at that passage real quick. Ezekiel 9. Ezekiel says, "He called into my ears in a loud voice, saying, 'Bring near the executioners of the city, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand.'" This is talking about when the Babylonians are going to be coming in. "And behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, facing north, each with his war club in his hand. One man among them, clothed in linen, had a scribe's writing case at his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of the God of Israel went up from above the cherub where it had been to the threshold of the house. He called to the man clothed in linen who had the scribe's inkhorn at his side. Adonai said to him, 'Go throughout the city, throughout the midst of Jerusalem. Make a mark on the foreheads of the people who sigh and moan over all the abominations that are committed in it.' To the others, he said in my hearing," Ezekiel says, "Go through the city after him and strike. Show no pity or compassion. Kill off old men, young men and girls, little children and women, but touch no one who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary." Then they began with the elders who were before the house. And so again, judgment begins in the house of God. And the Lord in Jerusalem says, there's this image, and obviously this is invisible, this is unseen. These 6 servants of the Lord come, one bearing having this ink, and he says, "Put a mark on all those who sigh and moan. And as you mark them, don't touch them, but the judgment is now coming upon all of these others." And so we see this in Ezekiel chapter 9, this same image of the Lord setting apart those in the midst of the judgment who he is sparing, those who mourn over the abominations. And so, it's and in the passage, when you go on, where judgment seems to engulf everyone, Ezekiel says, "What is the entire remnant of Israel going to be destroyed?" And God's answer at the moment said, "Yeah, well, Israel is going to be destroyed, but there is this hope that is given for the regathering of his people." Let's continue though this morning, Revelation chapter 7, verse 4. John says, "Now I heard," so there's going to be this mark, "Hold back the winds until you mark the servants of God with the seal of the living God." He says, "Now I heard the number of those marked with the seal, 144,000, from every tribe of Bnei Israel." And what's left out here is a second use of the word sealed. He says, "I heard the number of those marked with the seal, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel." And so John doesn't say he sees the sealing of the servants of God, but he hears the message. "And I heard the number of those sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe of the sons of Israel." And so the list of tribes that begins now in going verses 5 through 8 begins with a reference to 12,000 that are sealed. It begins with 12,000 from the tribe of Judah. So Judah is the 4th son, but Judah listed as the first tribe, though it makes perfect sense. Obviously, it's not, in most lists, Judah is not the first in the list, but since Judah is the tribe from which Messiah comes, he's the tribe of David from which, the kings come forth and the Messiah comes from him. Judah is identified with Yeshua, who has the key of David, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so you have now this list, and it says they were sealed. In verse 5, it says 12,000 from the tribe of Judah, sealed. Then it begins going through this list, and then when it gets to the very end in Benjamin, it says sealed. So let's just look at the list. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah, sealed, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Gad, 12,000 from the tribe of Asher, 12,000 from the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 from the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 from the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 from the tribe of Levi, 12,000 from the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 from the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 from the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 from the tribe of Benjamin. So this group is the 144,000. There's two places in the book of Revelation where the 144,000 are mentioned. The first is, again, here. In this passage, they're on earth. We know this, right, from the verses we've just read. Lord, don't harm any of the earth or the sea or the trees until they've put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Don't let anything else that's going on hinder what I'm doing with these people. There's a unique insulation of these people from other things that are happening. And so they're going to be sealed to ensure their preservation from the judgments that are due to the now what's coming with the seventh seal and the opening and the sounding of the trumpets. And then in the second vision, there's it's a heavenly vision, and it says in chapter 14, 1 through 5, I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion. With him were 144,000 who had his name and his father's name were written on their foreheads. Verse 2, and I heard a voice from heaven like a roar of rushing waters and the boom of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like harpists playing on the harps, and they are singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one is able to learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from among mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no lie. They are blameless. So the question being, who are the 144,000? This is a difficult question. It's one of the more difficult questions to fully ascertain. I'm always surprised by the boldness with which a lot of Bible interpreters dealing with Revelation will say with a seeming kind of absolute certainty, this is so-and-so. I mean, if you're honest with the ambiguities and the uncertainties, you're aware there's a broad range of interpretations and that have existed throughout history, which dedicated scholars, Bible teachers have come to different conclusions about who they would suggest that this group is, or whether the language is literal or figurative. And even if it's literal, then they begin to argue about the timing and the placement of these people in the flow of history, right? Because again, the question is this in, going in a chronological order, the entirety of the book of Revelation, or are we seeing things kind of from a different perspective, like I talked about yesterday, and where we see the earthquake, which I believe is the same earthquake that we see 3 different points. The 7 seals encompass the 7 trumpets, so you can see the same line of something running through, but you're seeing it from different perspectives. And then the 7 trumpets encompass the 7 bowls of wrath. You've got multiples of an even number of 12 here that clearly resonate with significance for God's redemptive history, for things that we see in prophecy. There are features of the New Jerusalem that symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 emissaries or apostles. We see that. Of course, Yeshua's selection of the 12 as representative of Israel, we see. And it's likely that there is that it is figurative. The thing that we have to note, though, is that the question is, who are they? They are servants of God. Do they represent? Is it a literal 144,000? I personally don't think so. It could be. And does this point to all believers? Is this an imagery for all believers? What's interesting is that when it lists this, the specification is given that they are sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. They're not just from Israel, but from the sons of Israel, from the tribes of the sons of Israel. It's from every tribe of the sons of Israel. And again, it's listed, it's got Judah listed first. And then it begins to go, and you deal with Reuben and Simeon and Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Gad, Asher, Naphtali. It says Joseph, Manasseh, and Benjamin. Now, when you're talking about the tribes of Israel, there's actually 14 names to deal with, because we talk about the 12 tribes, but when the divisions were made, of the land, Levi was not given a land, but then Joseph, his two sons it was a double portion. And so often you don't have Joseph listed, but here you have Joseph listed. You don't have Dan listed here. Dan is not listed. And Ephraim, Joseph's son Ephraim, is not listed here, while his son Manasseh is. That's another part that's a little unusual about this list, is that this list is an unusual listing of the 12 tribes, that it includes one of Joseph's sons. And so it's there's more of a prophetic listing, it seems to be, of the tribes than a literal listing. There's a prophetic listing at the end of Ezekiel as well. So it's more likely that this is symbolic than literal. The 12 times 12,000 is, again, normally the 11th group would come from the tribe of Joseph, but you don't hear the word the tribe of Joseph. And so Joseph being mentioned, obviously we know Joseph was one who had dreams and prophetic activities and so forth, and he stands as second to last, and then Reuben being listed second, they're sort of in a parallel position. Here's the brother who didn't want to kill Joseph, preserving his life, and so you have them. That it's interesting. This could be indeed a symbolic representation of the whole body of Messiah, that includes Jews and Gentiles, a preserved people kept throughout the age-long era as witnesses to Messiah of the tribulation. The only thing that would lead me that would lead me to think, I believe that this is pointing to a remnant of Jewish believers in Yeshua. When we look at the 144,000 identified in Revelation 14, the thing that jumps out at me is where it says, the end of verse 4, Revelation 14:4, says, "These have been redeemed from among mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb." And so here they are the firstfruits, and you have this to the Jew and then to the nations. So this is a picture of God's faithfulness to his promises of his people, the 144,000 that are indeed, that are sheltered, that are marked by him, sealed by him. There's this representation of the full measure of God's fulfilling his commitment to the Jewish people. I mean, the scripture clearly states God has not abandoned Israel or excluded Israel from his purposes. You read Romans 9 through 11. I mean, some of the commentaries, when you read this, they will almost plainly state something that is a replacement theology that basically says, that no, this is just that it's the true Israel. Well, it's certainly symbolic here, but I think it does speak to God's purposes, the fullness of his redemptive history of using Israel as a people to make him known to the nations. And so this group functions as the heirs to what God has done, owing, through Israel. But believers are grafted in. But I believe that, there's a fullness, right? There's a fullness of God's faithfulness represented here, and there's the imagery of of the Lord's protection, of his seal upon them. And so we see those who are sealed. So look, what we're going to see tomorrow, we're going to finish up here now, is we'll see again those who died. The ones who were saying, how long, O Lord? How long until you avenge our blood, right? So here are those that are sealed from all that's coming. And you have those who died in the process. And yet in both cases, you see God's faithfulness. You see his supervision, his superintending over the entirety of all of it, that it is we are in his hand. He is in our midst and we are in his hand. And I love the imagery of there's a mark that you and I are marked with a mark that maybe people can't see, but he can see, that he has marked his people, sealed us with the name of the Lamb and the name of his Father, right? The seal of the living God, marked upon your heads, and there's comfort in that. Amen? All right, well, I've gone a little over again today, but I want to say good morning I'll just say can I just say a general good morning to everybody? And I do appreciate, I'm so thankful that every day we're on here together, and your faithfulness, day by day, year after year, as we continue to grow in the Lord, to grow in his word, and that we would never, in all of this, never simply seek to have some sort of intellectual faith that's just based in our brains, but that our spirits would always be tender to what the Lord is speaking, to what he's doing, and that our lives would be a reflection of his love, that we would be a people who reflect his character, that we would be spurred on to love people in a way that shows that demonstrates that mark that he's placed on us, that what they would see in us, in the way we demonstrate our lives, is what he sees, and that it would be something beautiful. That's my heart's desire every day when we meet together. We would meet with him so that we would be transformed and be transformative. And so let's continue to stay focused. When you step out into your day today, to say, how can I be Yeshua? How can I demonstrate the love of Yeshua in a hurting and a broken world? Amen? All right, well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.
I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. And I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me, and love has called my name. And I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God. I am surrounded by the arms of the Father. I am surrounded by songs of deliverance. We've been liberated from our bondage. We're the sons and the daughters. Let us sing our freedom. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child of God. I am a child